welcome to XReality Podcast. I'm the host, Dominique Wu, and beside me is Helen, our guest. Each week, we will have conversations with industry leaders to explore the unexpected connections and opportunities between diverse sectors and the world of spatial AI and XR. Today, our guest is Helen. Hi, Helen. Would you share a little bit about your background with us?
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. I'm kind of new to XR. I have been in this space for about 3 years now, and I have a background in early childhood education, and I have also been I'm also a writer. I write historical fiction novels. And one of the novels inspired me to create a VR world called the Foremothers Cafe. And the reason I created this world is because my book is about Swedish women who are fighting for uh, suffrage, the right to vote, and reproductive justice. And this is the early reproductive justice movement, and that didn't really take off until well into the 20th century. It was very, very controversial. But my book begins in 1889, and in the beginning, and also the characters in my book, they are getting together because they are fighting for temperance, which is a very interesting piece of history because it's actually that you shouldn't drink so much alcohol, specifically that they didn't want men to drink so much alcohol, because if men drank so much alcohol, they felt that they didn't have control in their marriages because simply their husbands were too drunk. And that had a lot of implications. One was spacing of pregnancies. They couldn't talk to their husbands about when to be careful and when to, plan for a new baby, basically. And because they were too drunk and they didn't listen, which, to say it bluntly, it's harder to reason with a very drunk man that's a lot larger and heavier than you. So that's really how they started. And also, women at that time were responsible for their for the household, for the rearing of the children, and for the money that they needed to use in the household to take care of their children in the home. Even if they both worked, women didn't earn as much as men. Men earned more because it was expected that they would provide for the household to give to the women to provide for the household. And if their husbands drank all that money away, as they used to say, they didn't have any recourse. So this is how the women in my novel starts to get together to organize for the temperance and to get men to drink less. And this slowly evolved into the suffrage movement. And so what inspired me to write this novel was this women's community, that they came together and they worked together to change their own lives. And so in my book, one of the women, her name is Hannah, she has a cafe. And that's the Foremothers Cafe now. And in the book, it's called The Frog. It's not called the Foremothers Cafe. But for me, living today in the year 2024, using XR and VR, I want the cafe to be for us, not for my character. So her cafe is an inspiration for us to continue her work, to have a women's community where we get together.
Wow, that is so meaningful. And
Thank
I
you.
think men drink less really helps a lot of things to happen in a good way. And also I think the interesting thing, I remember long time ago I read a news that means that it seems like there is a law. I don't know whether it is a fiction or just a joke, they kind of want men to not going out after 6 p.m. just to reduce the crime of the
Oh.
neighborhood. I don't know whether that is fictional, but yeah, something like a long time ago, because they find out that the woman went out and they find out the crime rate was increasing. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
asking women not to go out after 6 p.m., they asked like a man not going out after 6 p.m. because all the problem was causing by the majority of problem was causing by men. So I think
Yeah.
that, yeah, that logic makes sense because yeah, because sometimes when I saw a lot of news from India, right, they had a lot of like a man abuse the woman or
Yeah.
something. And I think if we regulate the man instead of asking women to, wear everything to cover your face, to cover
Yeah.
everything, so
Yeah.
you can reduce men's like a weird sensation types of stimulation. But I think, yeah, what your book really helps women or really like change the concept of the society wants women to be a certain way. So yeah, we all
It's
know that. Yeah.
yeah, and it's very interesting too to me how women always they have to kind of look at it broader for
Hmm.
them to control their own lives.
Yeah.
And in my book, my character Hannah, she is quite upset about, even though she's a temperance woman herself in the early days before she started to focus more on suffrage, she didn't like that shouldn't drink. So she drank, but she drank in secret because her women friends were very active in the temperance movement, and they were like, no, we shouldn't drink, we're temperance, we don't drink. And Hannah
Hmm.
said, but I don't have an issue with alcohol, so I want to drink. So at home with her husband, she had wine now and then, and she didn't tell her friends because she was a little embarrassed by that. But it's also very telling, I think, how much women sacrifice
Hmm.
for themselves and to get their point across, because
Yeah.
we're not living in an equal society. So, and then another interesting twist to this history is that the suffragists, the women themselves, were not for birth control, and there's a lot of
Oh.
historical reasons
Hmm.
for that, and that's very surprising to a lot of people.
Hmm.
And the ones who did prescribe and spoke about contraceptives, they were considered really, really radical. But they became more and more outspoken later. One of the characters in my book, Elise Ottesen Jensen, she started speaking about it in 1923 publicly, and at that time it was illegal to do so, but she still
Oh.
did it. Very brave woman. A real pioneer. And but now
Yeah.
I've talked too much. Let me
Oh,
know
no, no,
what.
no, no. I
Yeah.
think this is amazing because I think technology serves for human. And instead of keep talking about technology, like, oh, what's the new, like a API or something, I'm more like interested in seeing what's the current problem is and how we can help. And maybe the solution is not AI XR, it's all good. But I think we need to kind of like, for example, like I today before our meeting, I had like a record the XR weekly news, and I was talking about the energy that consumed by 100 word generated by
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT is one bottle of water. And it's like a lot of energy consumed and a lot of like water consumed for data center. So even though we kind of, I would say like more like XR bar, even though we are embracing all the technology, but the energy consumed and
Yeah.
environmental awareness, all those stuff, I am just like, I have no answer because we think we solve the problem or we
Mm-hmm.
raise the productivity, but there's another new problems keep bringing back. So
Yeah.
it's just, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I saw the headline of several articles about nuclear plants opening up.
Yeah, the
And
three
there's one.
mile, 3 mile, like a nuclear plant, like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Constellation. signed the contract with Microsoft, and I just talk
Yes,
about the
exactly.
news. It
Yeah.
seems like Microsoft is using kind of existing grid. I'm not very good at energy stuff, but the grid was built by government, and they are using the existing stuff, and on top of the current energy consumption for the local resident. On top of it, they want additional energy for Microsoft, which might have something happen.
No, it's definitely something we need to be aware of and see what we can do about, because if it's a concern, it's something we should know about and see how what we can do to have a greener planet. If that's a concern, then we have to look at it. I don't have any expertise in that, but
Me too. I look at that. I was like, this news should be on the front line. Why it's like hiding somewhere and you need to dig into. So I just like echo what you said, that I really love like the topic that is very high level, that is controversial, and something that we haven't really had a concrete solutions for it. So
thank you.
you just mentioned that you are the writer, and Foremother was the types of like the novel you wrote in the past to kind of like have a voice for the woman. And how about I know you moved to USA, right? And also you wrote a couple of novels after, for example, like the recent novel The Lure of Water and Wood. So you mentioned your first novel, and you turned into a cafe. And what's the next? What's the new one that you are building right now?
Sure. Let me just clarify. My novel that is based, the Foremothers Cafe is based on, is called Sour Milk in Sheep's Wool.
Okay.
And in Sour Milk in Sheep's Wool, there's a cafe that one of my characters has, and the novel begins in 1889 and it ends in 1926. So it's about the Swedish women's reproductive justice movement and the Swedish suffrage and temperance movement. So, but the cafe itself is called the Foremothers Cafe. And yes, then I have written a new novel called The Lure of Water and Wood, and it came out in November. And it is set much earlier in time, in the 16th, 17th, and 18th century, also set in Sweden. And that's about very different history. It's about the sorcery trials, specifically in the 18th century and 17th century, and about two mythological Swedish characters, or creatures rather. And it's my first historical fantasy novel because it's written from the perspective of the characters themselves, the creatures themselves. And so that's the first time I have done that, and that was really interesting.
Can you tell us like what's the core concept you want to convey through this new novel?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
You mentioned that the new book, The Lure of Water and Wood, and draw from the historical and plus like a fictional historical kind of event. And what's the novel's core? I would say core, like the voice.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you see this? Yeah.
Sure. So the interesting part about this novel is that in the 17th century and the 18th century, people believed that these mythological creatures, there's two of them, they believed that they were actually real. And people were often, much more often than you would think, accused of having spent time with these two mythological creatures. And So it's a little bit similar to the witch trials, but it's not they were not accused of being witches themselves. People were not accused of being witches. They were accused of spending time with mythological creatures. And today we know that these creatures, they didn't exist, and they don't exist, obviously. They're myth. But in the 17th century, especially in the 1650s, there were several court cases that were taken to the Supreme Court of Sweden, where people were accused of having spent time with them. And it was very serious, and they were tortured and often executed for having spent time with these characters. And yeah, it was very serious, and it's a very interesting history, because the belief system of the people living at that time is very, very foreign from our beliefs today. To us, it just seems silly, but it was very, very serious. And there wasn't a question if they believed or not, if they existed or not. The question was that the scientists of the time debated was what are they? How do they exist, and what are they made of? Some of them had debates if they were perhaps fog, or if they were saying that God could manifest them out of something natural, fog, for example. And that was a way to explain that, God has created these creatures, and so God allows the devil to use these creatures, and we can prove that by the fact that it's coming from natural material like fog. To us, that sounds insane. But that's what the scientists of the time sat around and debated. And when I learned of this, I became very intrigued. It was really, really, really interesting to me. And as a writer, what I'm interested in is what people believed in the past. The same thing with the women who were fighting for suffrage, but thought that contraceptives were too radical. The same thing that people could have scientists and priests of the time, and the theologians of the time, to sit around and debate if there were these creatures made of fog. It sounds insane to us, but it was very serious at that time. So what I did with this book, and what you asked what the core is, the difference between this book is that my characters are those two mythological creatures. So they are the ones who carry the story forward. It's these two mythological creatures. So it's a historical fantasy, since it's written from their perspectives, not from a person's perspective. And that was very interesting. Also, what's interesting to me, as somebody who writes historical novels, is that I could keep these creatures alive for a long, long time. So my book begins in 1599, and if I count the afterword, or the prologue rather, it actually ends in 2046. So they were immortal, because they were part of my story for as long as there was history to research about them. And the latest cases that I included in my book, 1748. Yeah. And so the book ends in 1748, but then I have like a afterwards with a little extra bit, and that's set in 2046.
Wow. So also my question is like, what's reality, right? Because reality, according to scientist definition, is that it follows a certain logic, and it can be the experience can be shared by a lot of different people. For example, like we believe there is a rabbit, or we know there's dog exists, and we see dogs, and we saw dogs. There's certain logic for dogs to be produced, right? So there's a logic. It has a logic, and also the experience is shareable by tons of different people, and it's all doing the same thing. There's a role behind it, and I think the world. I mean, I listened to like some kind of like a talks that Elon Musk mentioned that the world might be 99%, 90% of the world might be a simulation. So what I'm thinking is that also, if you see like quantum physics, there's like a duality of the light, which is like if you observe something and something will happen, but if you are not observing it, it will do something different. So maybe there's a way that maybe this world was being planned, and there are some bugs of this simulation world that maybe the creator, or I always refer that maybe God is a Unity developer or like a game developer and create us. And sometimes I feel like sometimes when we go somewhere, we always see that person, even that person remind me of somebody. And I always think these types of kind of psychology is like, oh, this is a prefab variant. It's like God is, or like creators create a bunch of identical characters, and they just do some prefab variant to fill out the gap. But I find out it's very interesting to just mention that, because I think if a lot of people had the shared experience, for example, like and those experience my words. For example, you see different civilizations, people all claim they see God. People all claim, even though the word is not God exactly, and people all claim, or like religions all have like something evil, something not good. So I think that might exist, or it might be the under surface, like because our eyes only can perceive a certain amount of lights. So maybe that is something that run under background. For example, when we do the Unity development, on the surface, the screen, we see the perfect games, but under it is coding and it's some energy running, and all those parts we didn't see it, but maybe some people can perceive those. Maybe there's a prefab inside my game in Unity. They can feel like, oh, am I being designed? Maybe that's what I think, that maybe
but
it's
that's
true.
Really interesting. Yeah, but it also talks to me, what you're saying also reminds me of the perception of culture and the perception of the time period you're in. Like if you go back to my books again and you think of the ones who took people to court in the 1650s because they thought they had this woman had spent time with this mythological creature who he was a creature. He was a man. He was a male creature who played music in the river. And then if you get too close, he drowned them. And so this woman obviously survived the danger from being near him, but they still thought she'd spend time with him. And they didn't like it. It was very scary and dangerous. But that's their perception. That is because of what they have in their society. That's what they believe, because that's what they have been told about their world. And the only thing that's different between us and them is that we have moved forward and we have learned more about our world. And what you're saying about unity and how our perception of the world, just think of the perception about our world, the ones who are going to VR and XR. And yesterday I played golf in what is the app called?
Golf.
Walk about golf. And me and a few friends, we played a game of golf, and it was wonderful. And we were under the stars, and there were Chinese lanterns floating up into the sky with stars above us. But if I tell somebody who's never been in VR about that, they cannot conceptualize it. They don't understand it. And that's our perception again. And what is real and what isn't real. It was, very real for us. And I'm not very good at golf. I'm quite terrible at it, but it was a lot of fun. And it's very interesting to me to think of all these perceptions, and also think of history and what the future will say about us. Because they will have, in 400 years, they will have conversations about us. just like we're having conversations about the people, the history from my books. And it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think sometimes because I believe that we are human, we are very limited. We only can
Yeah.
measure a very specific things. For example, quantum physics is not even being proved, but it's a very, very crazy world. So think about that. For me, whatever science, because we are creating the role of science, we are trying to define the world. And the world, if you see the larger scale, right? It follows Newton. At the beginning, was more like a Newton's physics, like a three laws. It's very follow the rules, but later on, it starts getting a little bit crazier, and like quantum physics or some other like a unimaginable rules, that we find out that the world is kind of in the chaos or in the order, but inside there is chaos. Or if you want to say the other way, it's like there's a lot of chaotic things, but there's an order inside the chaotic things. For example, sometimes we feel like, hey, why we always put something that we couldn't explain as supernature or luck, right?
Exactly.
Or unfortunate. But actually, maybe there's a role, or there's some chaotic things that outside of our knowledge that follow a certain other chaotic.
Yeah.
The reason why we say chaotic is because we don't understand. Maybe it follows its own chaotic way. So that's why I think for the science that we know is just a little tiny bit things in this big universe. So whatever people, so when there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people, maybe it's not being accepted by the majority. But if a lot of people has the same experience, I would say maybe this exists. That's just my, because how can this person and this person share the same experience, even though others cannot? But maybe it's just those people have some special sensors that can sense something. And you see, like your story, there's a male in the river, lure people in the river. It's kind of like reminds me of like a I don't know, or the Odyssey or some other historical book that has siren that instead of man is woman. And I would say that those spiritual stuff, they will form according to your perception. For example, they will get into your brain and tell you what and form or visualize the form that you like. So maybe as a woman, it forms a man, but if a man, it forms a woman. So maybe there might be some interesting things that outside of our knowledge, but it actually exists. But certain people can do it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because these stories, they must have come from somewhere. And perhaps like I believe sirens are Irish or English, if I'm not wrong, but maybe there are some kind of sounds coming from the way the water moved and the wind. And that maybe that made this sound that they thought it was music, or if they saw, I don't know if there's any musical elements to the sirens, but I can definitely imagine the men feeling that they saw that. And I should mention, my other character in this book is a woman, also a mythological creature, and she was seen in the woods, in the forest, and she had very long, dark hair. And often it was men, when they had been out in the woods for a long time alone, they thought that they saw her like deep in the woods, and they followed her, but then they couldn't really tell if it was a woman or just a tree trunk. And if you do go to Swedish forest, we have a lot of very tall trees that are branchless on the bottom, and the branches are all higher up. And if it's dark and it's far away and you see movement, you can certainly think that, oh my gosh, I saw somebody. And then you get closer, oh no, it was just a tree trunk. But so it's probably coming from misunderstandings or sounds, and that the people couldn't explain. And when there isn't science available because people didn't know enough at that time, then you have to try to explain it to yourself. And so it's however we do that as humans, it's very interesting. And it's, again, perception. And
Yeah, and I think if there's a group of people that believe in some certain ways, I would say maybe it's kind of true in their um, perspective. Because is
Mhm.
there any pure objective real world exist?
Good question. Yeah, it's all perception with our eyes and our ears and our noses and all our senses, what we can
Yeah,
perceive. But there's
yeah,
more, but we just
yeah.
can't pick it up.
Yeah, yeah. So, for example, like when we see like even like ghost stories across different country culture from the past in the recent, we all know that maybe like a radio, if you tune in some certain weird
Yeah.
outside of human range, you can hear something. So maybe there's really something. And for example, I usually said that the world is painting with information we just couldn't see in our bare eyes. So we need AR
Yeah.
glass. So you see, even though, like for example, Pokemon Go, there's some data inside, like outside, there are some invisible monsters, but you need to download that app, and so you can
Yeah.
see them. So maybe some people just wear a certain types of or have more sense inside them. Because in the ancient time, in Asia, we believe there are people who has like third eyes who can kind of
Yeah.
perceive the world beyond the thing that we think is concrete. And even, for example, like this is concrete, right? But if we kind of zoom in for a very large number, we will find out everything was made of electron, like
Yeah.
atom, and there are tons of big space behind it. So I think, yeah, we are just in the time, and we are, you see, we are concrete. We couldn't even go to the future, and we couldn't go back to the past.
Hmm.
And we are confined with our physical body. So I believe, I think for those creatures you mentioned, I believe maybe people are just trying to tell us, oh, we can control, because science means that we can control, we can predict. It's logical. Maybe we
Hmm.
just wanna trying to convince ourselves actually that's bullshit. So we can control. But maybe in the past, people has less logical, they are more humble, they probably know more than us. That's just my thought.
Yeah, maybe that's a really interesting perspective. I haven't thought of that, but yeah, it's that's very interesting. And I do wonder if we close ourselves off to these natural,
Hmm.
just the natural world. And because we are very busy with our technology, which,
Yeah.
I love technology, obviously,
Yeah, me
but
too.
there's still something that happens if you are quiet and you put your phone down and you put your computer down and you go out in nature and you relax and you
Yeah.
listen to what you hear. And we miss that most of the time just from noise pollution and light pollution and all of these things. So what you said really makes sense, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can tell you, like more like my personal experience when I was very, very young, I can see things. So that's why, but
Ah,
after I believe, I mean, that's a little bit religion. I believe in Buddhism in the
yeah,
past when I was in
yeah.
Taiwan. But when I
Ah,
came
oh, yeah.
here back in 2008, when
Mm-hmm.
I was 23, I believe in Jesus,
Okay.
Christian. So I had like a two religion background, and all the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I was so into those types of things, because I saw things, and that things is super matching with the reality. For example, like
Mm.
I saw my uncle's ghost appear in
Really?
front of me right before
Really?
someone told me she passed away 10 minutes
Really?
ago. So there's some, like, I don't know, it's called telepath or something.
Yeah, yeah.
I can see something, and actually that thing is so highly related to reality. And my mom always said that you are so tired. You probably study too hard, and trying to make
Yeah.
everything reasonable. So yeah, so I was like a very kind of like a trying to figure out what's the world actually is. And first, I believe in Buddhism, and I think the world is a believing system. If you believe things will follow that believing system. So when I believe in Buddha, and I find out a lot of things just keep coming to me and want me to recite a certain spell, because if you know like a Buddha, there's like a Buddha called Guan Shi Yin. My legal name is Kuan Yi, and that Buddha's name is Kuan Yin, Kuanyin. Mine is Kuanyi, and they want me to recite that. It's called Goddess of Mercy.
The Goddess of Mercy.
Goddess of Mercy in Buddha. It's called Guan Yin, and it's very similar to my legal name. And when I was in high school, during the night, those stuff will come to me and ask me to recite a certain part for them, their soul to go to another world, which later on I find out the language is so powerful. For example, I said that and I think of that types of, spirit. And later on, I couldn't find that thing because that's probably go to the so-called Western world. And I just keep kind of doing this for a long time, for my teenager time, and trying to wonder what's going on with the world. It seems like I'm so different from other people. But when I believe in Jesus Christ, like more like a baptized, they said that those are bad things. So you need to get rid of all your stuff. And when I kind of get rid of those, and I find out when the ghosts come to me, they are all black, dark. They are all more like trying to do bad things to you. And I just say, oh, Lord Jesus, and there's a light, and just keep them away. So for me, it's more like, oh, which believing system you wanna in, and whatever spirit will reflect according to your believing system. So I find out your story is very interesting.
Oh, thank you. But that, and thanks for sharing that. And I also think you're right that we perceive what we have around us and what we're influenced by. And if we're told it's bad, then it's easier for us to think it is. When we're told it's good, then we think, no, this is a good thing. So humans are very sensitive and very, what's the word? It's very easy to get influenced. We're very influenceable, if that's a word, that we're, we get influenced by our surroundings very, very easily. And I think that's one of the things I like to write about also is the time periods before are very different from our time period now where we live now, but every single person that has ever lived has lived in modern times. And things change and we evolve slowly with it. But I'm talking too much about writing and history and not so much about VR. I'm sure you have more questions about VR and all that. Cool. I'm happy to talk about it.
So we talk a lot of like a historical and also the perceptions, what's reality, what's mythical creatures, and what do you think about like the technology in the historical or novel aspect? For example, like AI. Right now, everybody is talking about AI. What do you see like AI or XR influence the author? Or like what can author utilize the technology to create and kind of like a storytelling?
Well, I think it's a fantastic tool. It's been really good for me just to for me I use it mostly if I'm stuck in a sentence, and I always have several programs at hand for grammar checking and things like this. And I have several, and I often cross-check a sentence or a paragraph. But the really cool thing with AI is it has a different, more human, if you will, perspective. There are several times where I had Pro Writing Aid, Grammarly, and Google Docs, and maybe one or two sentences. And I knew what my characters were thinking, and there was a comma there. And they all said you have to have a comma. in this place. And it doesn't feel good. And then I put it into ChatGPT, and I said, so is this correct? Do I have to have a comma here? And it would ask, I call it she, but anyway, she, according to my own, how I feel about it, is she said, well, is your character feeling agitated right now, or calm and happy? Is he angry? If he's angry or having a lot of feelings, you can absolutely not have a comma here. And it's like, oh, okay, yes, thank you. And he's like, this is totally fine to skip it here. And there were other times where ChatGPT said, you should have a comma here. I see why you're saying that you shouldn't. But in this, yeah, you should have a comma here, and explained why. And it's an amazing tool. So for me, more that than writing itself. Writing itself, I think that most writers who are good at their craft, if they ask ChatGPT to write something for them, they will very quickly see that, oh, no. This is not my voice. This is not how I write. And no, please don't do that. I don't write like that at all. But as a tool to cross-check things or just brainstorm with a little bit, and it's fantastic. It's a really great tool. And in VR, I haven't done so yet, but it would be really cool to have my characters in my VR world explaining both the storyline and the historical context. So that is something I would love to do at one point. Right now, the world is, empty. There are no characters in there that are greeting the visitors, but it would be really cool if Hannah could be standing behind the counter in the cafe, and you could ask her questions about her feelings about suffrage and reproductive rights in, her time period. Maybe. So this is another detail I should tell you that, like I said, my book begins in 1889, and my character, she created the cafe. She opened her cafe in 1890, but the cafe itself, in the Four Mothers Cafe itself, my VR world is set in 1918. So at that time, the suffrage movement was well underway already. So it's a lot later in my story.
Wow. So
it would be, yeah. So if you come into my world, like I said, in 1918, my character would have a lot of experience already, which is kind of cool. She could tell you a lot about her life and the cafe itself and all the conversations they had in there, because she's been at it for a long time by then, and history has changed a lot. And,
I mean, when I hear this, I think recently I used Convey, it's kind of a software, and which allows me to utilize. 'Cause I was thinking about putting Edgar Allan Poe inside my VR place, and when people toggle it, and they can talk to Edgar, and I can change their the personality. They have a chart. I just
Edgar
drag
Allan Poe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's the Revan. I mean, it's for me. So I don't know. When I did that, I feed a lot of information about who's Edgar Allan Poe, but I think Convey, that types of plugin kind of compatible with Unity, WebGL, and Unreal. And I use that, and they use like ChatGPT to power the normal brain, but you can feed a lot of local data to feed it. So I find out it's not so far not really compatible with Meta Quest VR, but you can use Open XR. It's using the new bundle for Unity, so it's WebXR. So I don't know if you are interested. I personally use that.
I should also say that I didn't build a cafe myself. Cos and Christie XR Design did it, and they used Unity and Blender. So I don't have those technical skills. We collaborated to get the cafe to look like it does in my book. but I didn't actually physically build it myself. So I wish I could do that, but I can't.
It's fine. It's fine. No worries. Yeah, I just think that for AI characters inside is cool. And
Yeah.
I think I also kind of like ask a bunch of people, what do you think about AI character inside I don't know, inside the story? And some people said that they might worry that, well, sometimes if we are not guarded well, it might lead the user because user can freely talk to them. So I don't know. I'm still like
Yeah.
exploring like some AI characters in VR.
Yeah, I have thought of that too. When for me, historical context and historical accuracy is very important. And
Mm,
you do bring up an important point. I would be worried that the
yeah.
character would tell the visitor something inaccurate about
Yes.
Swedish
Yes.
history,
Yeah.
or it could be something very simple like a translation mistake. And
Mm.
you who are also bilingual, you would know, at least bilingual, I don't know, maybe speak more languages, but um, it's very easy to do a direct translation and completely
Oh yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
So AIs are better than that. Obviously, they're pretty good at translating or taking knowledge directly from the source. They don't have to translate it, but
Mm.
still, there could be mistakes, and that would be my concern. But
Yeah.
we'll see. It's still
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, I think the high quality things might we might concern that the AI assistant. Yeah, have you tried like a ChatGPT, the strawberry, the new one that,
Strawberry.
yeah, it's
No.
called 401 preview. It's like the paid for ChatGPT 4, but the new model is 40 or something,
Yeah.
401. Yeah, preview,
Yeah.
and it's called strawberry. And it seems like
Ah.
it already passed all the PhD level for any science, any all the different area. It's already
Wow.
the
Wow.
benchmark is exceeding a lot of PhD. So a lot of people said that right now is very different from in the past, because in the past we think, oh, I just have to graduate from school and get as high degree as possible,
Hmm.
and then get a job and work for 20 years and retire. But now it seems like we've already have a group of PhD as our free assistant
Yes.
and
Yes.
help us to create stuff. I just feel like, well, how can we harness
Yes.
these tools? Yeah.
Because it's fantastic, and the potential in that is incredible. And
Mm.
it's and people who are nervous about AI taking over our jobs,
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of yeah, a lot of people talk about this, but I feel like the potential and the amazing information we can get and that we have at our fingertips is only to our benefit. And
Mm.
of course, I understand that you have to be cautious. You need to look at this and see.
Mm.
We need to learn to use this for good.
Yeah,
But we who are using it should be the ones who are looking at it. If people look at it and then they don't like it and they step away, then they lose control. So
yeah.
if we use it and we learn to use it in the best possible way, I think it's a wonderful tool.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Because, for example, like recently I read a lot of news. For example, like a software engineer, AWS manager told their engineer, once the AI can automate your job, you don't really necessarily have to code, something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
which make kind of make their engineer, instead of doing more like a linear job, just build whatever infrastructure, they need to do
Mm-hmm.
more like customer service, need to face their customers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also I saw like another new Wall Street Journal's news about like a lot of people recently got laid off in the tech sectors, and they find
Mm-hmm.
out it's very different from 2008, the types of
Mm-hmm.
recession, because this time is irreversible, means that once the company already built up more like an AI system, those people won't get hired again. And if you see
Mm-hmm.
Cisco, IBM, they are all start laying off tons of like very high level kind of like engineer or people, and
Mm-hmm.
instead they want to build their own infrastructure. And Meta recently released an AI chatbot, which you put the product idea, it will build a software for you.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, it also brings up conversations and issues about, do we have to work so much?
Yeah,
You
right,
know,
right.
maybe if we have universal income, imagine what we could do if we didn't have to go to work. It's like we're locked in this mindset that we have to work 9 to 5,
Mm,
and we have to, we have to get paid for
mm.
what we do,
Yeah,
and that's just the way it is. But
yeah.
what if we have universal income? We
Mm,
don't have to go to work.
mm.
People would still do stuff,
Yeah,
and maybe people would be happier. Maybe people would be reaching out to their neighbors more. They would be less busy.
yeah.
So we can change the way we do things in a
Mm.
very positive way also.
Yeah, because I also saw another news that there was a woman in her 25 years old, and she got laid off from a AI very advanced company. And she
Hmm.
said that she started getting kind of like depressed because she didn't see like a work. Like before, she said that she put her entire life to work. But now,
Yeah.
if the work being taken away, for example, if you see recently there's some news like a Hollywood strike voice actors. I mean,
Yeah.
voice
Yeah.
actors is probably the first wave being impacted because recently I upload my new book to Amazon Kindle, and I was
Yeah.
thinking about self-reading the audiobook. Before I was
Yeah.
thinking about contracting voice actor a few months ago, but it's just
Hmm.
too expensive, three
Yeah.
to
Super
five
expensive.
thousand. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
was thinking about read myself. And later on, around June, they released a button that I just press the button. It will have automatically generate the virtual
Really?
voice. Yeah, yeah.
And so you have done this?
Oh, yeah, yeah. My
How
audiobook
did it
is, yeah, you need to
really?
be Kindle. You need to upload your entire
Yeah.
file,
Yeah.
which
They
might
are.
later being a data train for Amazon AI. But it feels like we are feeding a lot of data. But
Wow.
yeah, but for Amazon right now, they have like a one click and it will turn all your Kindle. You need to publish first
So
on
it
Kindle.
already is there. So
Yeah,
my
yeah.
Kindle books, people can already listen to them if they want to.
You
Or
need
I
to
have
see
to
whether
click.
you click the virtual
Yeah.
voice button. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I would love to hear if you have listened to your own book and how it came out, because I have two of my books, not all of them, but two of them have a lot of Swedish words in them.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I'd be very interested in the
Hmm.
pronunciation of them. And so that makes me a little nervous how it would pronounce that. But
I remember when you publish, before you publish, you can pre-listen to all the chapters. So you
you
can go
can.
there. You can.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you can kind of go to your Swedish word and let the virtual voice to read it for you. And also they have tons of different
Wow.
voice and
Wow.
sound and emotions. So see what types
Really?
for you to pick. So I was like,
Oh my
wow, the
gosh, that's
entire voice
amazing.
actors like industry will be destroyed because like who will work with the voice actor because it takes so long, and for that
Hmm.
one click thing it's like the next day it's done.
I understand. I understand voice actors and how that's terrible. That's their livelihood. I completely
Yeah.
understand that. But then you can also flip the script. All of us independent
Mm.
writers
Yeah, right.
who don't have a huge publishing company behind us,
Yeah, like
who
me.
are do and me, who is doing all this ourselves.
Mm.
We can't have audiobooks because we can't afford to hire somebody
Yeah.
How much money did you say it costs?
3 to 5,000 and takes
Yeah.
more minimum 3 months.
Yeah, like I can't afford that.
Yeah, I cannot.
And so I understand it takes your work away, but we can't afford you anyway, so we would not hire you anyway. And so there's plus and minuses there as it is. And yeah, it's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
I can certainly see both sides, but I know a lot of readers ask me if my books are on audio. On
Yeah,
Audible.
right. That would be great because sometimes when I drive, I like to just put audio, just fill out the emptiness while I'm driving, like a 1 hour.
Yeah, exactly. And I tell them no, they're not, because So thank you for that. I did not know that. That's really
yeah. You upload to Amazon and first publish as Kindle, and later on, normally it will has like a virtual voice studio and one click. Yeah, and you check. And if you didn't see that button show up, you can email their customer service because they June I was in the beta program. Yeah, so they are still very new.
I see. Because my books are already on Kindle.
Yeah.
But so I would have to go into my Kindle books and,
like a
and
bookshelf.
activate that.
Yeah. You need to click that. Yeah, and you can like a chapter by chapter, and according to your script, you can pre-listen to what the sound. If not, you can rewrite and force that voice character, virtual one, AI one, to re-pronounce it in the right way.
Right. So how would you do it then? Because in my latest book, there's two characters. One is male and one is female. And, their chapters are written from the female's perspective.
Yeah.
And then the other chapter is written from the male's perspective. And certain times during the story, excuse me, they're talking to each other. So how would that work?
Interesting. A long time ago, I just used one voice. I didn't really have that
so it's a narrator's
specific
voice, really more.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I can show you my screen, and you can take a look.
Oh yeah, great.
Yeah. I mean, this one, right? So, Kindle ebook, audio. Yeah. So this is pretty much if you see this.
Wow.
Let's say. Hope I didn't.
Oh, that is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's beta, actually beta. So I wouldn't say that because they will bring people to that. And I remember I keep following up when I saw the news. They are having a group of people for the beta. So if you didn't see that button, audio button, something, audio. Yeah,
I don't think I have that on mine. I don't believe so. I will look, but I don't think so.
Yeah, you can do this, right?
And British, English, American English. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and age, right? You can see like what's the.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
My characters are immortal. That'll be hard. One is many hundreds of years old. The other one is a couple of 100 years old. But yeah, no, that's very cool.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of like see like a open. Yeah, if you see this done. Oh, sec. Oh. Let's see. Yeah, it has this. I don't know whether they changed the interface or not because I didn't have. Yeah, you can listen to the pronunciation, voice speed. Yeah, and you can play the audio. Let's see, maybe engage.
Engage.
Wow.
People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Maya.
Yeah, so if the pronunciation, you can edit pronunciation and how it should be said. I think you probably can record this or type something. Yeah. So you can definitely kind of review it. Yeah. So this is
Wow, that'll be my next project. My goodness, that's quite amazing. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. So I find out I don't know how two different types of characters you can do, but this is mine is less of fiction, so I use this automation.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Really amazing. And
Yeah. So that's why, like, for example, voice actors, all those people are having strike because their entire life is reading
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
and them. I mean, that's, you know, and they have their bills to pay and their mortgages to pay, their
Yeah.
everything. So I really do understand. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know what the answer is for how to solve this. And
Yeah, and it seems like, for example, like people are trying to figure it out. And I listened to some podcast, some investor
mhm,
podcasts. I
yeah,
remember Sam Altman mentioned that his team predict there will be a lot of unicorn companies, uh, kind of funded or kind of produced within 5 people. Like the company
mhm,
size is very small, like a 1 to 5
yeah,
people. They can
yeah,
create more than $1 billion value startups everywhere, and investor will have a lot of different choice products to pick. Yeah,
mhm,
I don't know. It's like a so that's why I think maybe in the future we need to create our own brand and utilize AI. AI is under us, and we create product instead of we are competing labors with AI in specific field. That's
yeah,
my thought. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We have to rethink everything we're doing because
Yeah.
as they say, the cat is out of the box. We're not going to put it back. It's
Yeah, it's
already
not
here. We're
yours.
already using it, and anyone who's used it a few times,
Love it.
I would think most of us who's used it more than a few times will not stop using it because it's
Yeah.
so good. And so we have to learn how to use it for the benefit
Cool.
of all and figure things out. So,
Cool. Yeah.
yeah.
So anything you want to mention at the end of the podcast, like any topic?
Yeah, sure. Please come and visit me at the Four Mothers Cafes on the Engage platform. And I have events every month. Uh, I have once a month, I have a discussion series
Mm.
with a guest. And every Thursday, I have what we call fika. And fika means Swedish coffee break with
Oh.
friends and something sweet to eat. So that's every Thursday at 2. Uh, and please read my books. And Sour Milk and Sheep's Wool is the one which inspired the Four Mothers Cafe. So if you read Sour Milk and Sheep's Wool, you can literally go into the book afterwards, and you can come
Wow.
before as well. There aren't too many things that will spoil the plot for you, but you can absolutely come visit it before and maybe be inspired to read it. But if you read it first and then come in, you will recognize where you are.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Helen, for being our guest today. I learned a lot from you, from historical fiction to what's reality to AI impact the author's like a new way of creation. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It was an honor to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. We release episodes weekly. If you enjoy the conversation, check out our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Support us by giving us a follow and a 5-star rating, or subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.